Of course, now all the buys are done. We're hitting into round 16. So everyone's been talking about the rest of the season predictions. What's going to happen with the rest of the ladder? So on screen right now is the current ladder as it sits at the end of round 15. The Swans obviously still being on top, North Melbourne down the bottom. First of all, I'm going to go over my AFL ladder prediction for the rest of the season. So first of all, I've got the Swans still sitting on top. Carlton in second, Collingwood third, Essendon fourth. The Lions jump all the way up into fifth. Freo in sixth, Bulldogs seventh, Geelong in eighth. Unfortunately for Hawthorn fans, I've got them in ninth. Giants 10th, Port Adelaide 11th, Melbourne 12th, Adelaide 13th, Gold Coast 14th, St Kilda 15th, West Coast Eagles 16th, North Melbourne, which may surprise a few people, moving into 17th, and then I've got Richmond getting the wooden spoon. So what have you got for your ladder predictions?
So I've went the Swans to finish on top, Carlton second, Collingwood third, the Lions going to finish fourth.
Coming from the clouds.
Yeah, coming from the clouds to finish in the top four. Essendon to fifth, the Giants sixth, Geelong seventh, and the Dockers to round out the eight. And then I've got the Bulldogs ninth, Hawthorn at 10th, the Gold Coast at 11th, Port at 12th, Melbourne at 13, the Crows at 14, the Saints 15th, West Coast 16th, North Melbourne 17th, and Richmond in bottom spot.
Okay, so we've both got Richmond winning the spoon, the Swans winning the minor premiership as well. So we've got a few different. Now, what I wanted to look at first, we're not going to break down every single team. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the teams that are currently in the 8, but we are predicting that they're going to miss. And then we're going to take a look at the teams that are currently out of the 8, but will be making it in our predictions. And then just a couple of other teams that people may wonder. If you're really wondering why a certain team is somewhere, just leave a comment in the comment section and I'll try to explain why I've got a certain team where and whatever. Because I've still got the screenshots sort of saved. And maybe even I'll post them on Instagram. I've got 2 teams who are currently in the 8 that I've got missing. So first of all, I want to talk about the Giants. So looking at the Giants, their away games going forward for the rest of the season are quite tough. They've got the Crows, the Tigers, the Demons, the Lions, and the Bulldogs. And I really only have them winning one game, which would be the Tigers. And that's at the MCG, which is also not an easy ask. They've got the Crows at Adelaide Oval this week, so that's a really interesting one. We'll talk about that in the tips as well. But that's going to be a tough game. They've got the Melbourne at the MCG, the Lions at the Gabba, that's going to be tough, and then the Bulldogs. That's going to basically see if they do make the finals in round 24. I just think that it's just going to be tough. They're not really playing that consistent. We obviously saw at the end of last year, they obviously came out of nowhere and almost got into a grand final. So maybe if Adam Kingsley can get them into some form, they'll be all right. It looked like some good signs coming from them 2 weeks ago against Port Adelaide, but the Swans last week just looked a little bit off again. So I think the Giants have to prove to me personally that they are ready to go back into finals. Who knows, maybe they drop off this year and then bounce back next year, but right now I just see them missing. And the other team was Port Adelaide. So I think most people at this stage will have Port Adelaide missing the 8. Looking at it right now, the last 5 weeks of their season is really tough. They play 3 teams in the top 8, and the other 2 teams they play is Melbourne away and the Crows in the showdown. I've got them beating one team, which is Sydney, and the only reason why I've got them beating Sydney is because Sydney can't beat Port Adelaide. We have a very bad record against Port Adelaide, so that's the only game I've got them maybe stealing, and I think Sydney at the end of the day are going to lose some games towards the end of the season. But Port Adelaide right now, they're in shocking form. I think maybe they'll respond in the next couple of weeks, but overall, I think that the team that they have right now is not playing good enough to make finals, and I think at this point Ken Hinkley may even think that his job may be gone. So I'll be interested to see how much Port Adelaide's team put in to try and keep Ken Hinkley's job. But at this point, that's kind of my fall off there for Port Adelaide as well. So you had one team missing the 8 from the prediction. I think it was Port Adelaide as well.
Yeah, so mine was Port Adelaide. Yeah, they would drop out and the Lions would come in. The reasoning for Port Adelaide I've got... Yeah, with that last 5 games of the season, to be honest, I don't think they win any of the last 5 games. I really don't think they beat the Swans. I think the Power only win 2 more games for the season. I think they'll win this week with a response game.
Yeah.
And I think they only beat Richmond. I just don't think they can win any other games. Like the Gold Coast, that's in Gold Coast. They won't win that.
And they've got the Bulldogs at Adelaide Oval after the St Kilda this week. So, yeah, I mean, 2 wins from now, they wouldn't make the finals. And that's kind of where I've got them as well. I mean, I've got them beating the Swans. But other than that, I'm with you that I've only picked them winning 2 other games.
Yeah.
So even if they were to win a 3rd game, like I said, I've still got them finishing 11th. So I think that's fair enough. Looking at it though, teams that are currently out of the 8, but I think will make the finals is Brisbane and the Bulldogs. So first of all, Brisbane, I think that they're going to make it basically on the fact that they are in hot form at the moment. Looking at it, other than Collingwood, their home games are actually way tougher than their away games. And why that's a good thing is because I think if they were playing harder teams away, I think they would struggle. But because they're playing the better teams at home, I feel like they can beat them. They'll be going in favourite. So looking at it right now, they've got Melbourne this week, the Crows at Adelaide Oval, they've got the Swans, the Giants, and then the Bombers, all at the Gabba. So I've got them winning all of those games. Yeah. Even though the Swans, I know they're obviously in hot form, that's going to be a ripper game. It's round 19 for anyone wondering. That's going to be a ripper game. But at the moment, their away games are against West Coast. They can win that. They've got the Gold Coast. That'll be an interesting one. They've got St Kilda. They'll win that. And then they've got Collingwood, which, I mean, I think they lose that probably. If they win all those games at home, I've picked them only losing one more game for the rest of the season, the Brisbane Lions. So they still don't make the top 4. I've got Essendon making it there, unlike you. But yeah, Brisbane are in hot form. They've finally hit that form. It's taken them a very long time. But I think Chris Fagan kept the faith. You got to give him credit for that. He never wavered, which is good to see from a coach. And yeah, you got to give Brisbane credit. They're back. They're a really good side at the moment. So I think the Brisbane right now are a team to, be a big force going into finals as well. You wouldn't want to play them in the final series. And the Bulldogs as well. This is a bit of a tough one. I think if they are at their best form, they will run into the finals. But if they just have a stop-start, as they've been doing for a lot of this year, I don't know what's going to happen here. I've got them winning a lot of these games. Looking at it right now, they've got North Melbourne twice. They play 4 of the top 8 teams, but 2 of them are GWS and Port Adelaide, who I think are going to drop out. So that's what I'm saying. And a nice run home. Only hard games are against Sydney and Carlton, which I've got them losing. They do play Geelong, and I've actually got the Bulldogs winning that away from home down in Geelong. But honestly, that's a 50-50 game depending on form.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm kind of looking on that front. The Bulldogs making it, and the Lions, you've only got one team jumping into the 8 from here. And that's the Lions, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've got the Lions, and I'm with you the same way that I think they're only going to lose one more game for the season. I do have that as the same as you against Collingwood. The 2 players that could change this whole team, and I think could get them to a prelim, is Will Ashcroft, who could come back this week, in the form of Charlie Cameron. If Charlie Cameron can find the form, their forward line could be back to where it was last season. Well, considering Eric Hipwood's probably in the best form of his bloody career at the moment. Joe Danaher's playing pretty well. If Charlie Cameron can jump into that as well, they're going to be a hard team to beat. Yeah. And I mean, they could even do every chance of beating Collingwood as well if they're in hot form at the MCG. So I tend to agree with you. So I just want to take a look at a couple of other teams here. First of all is the Swans. Now, you may see that the Swans have got, I think they're 19-4 on my list, so they've got 3 other losses coming through. So looking at the rest of their season, the next 3 weeks, I do think that they can win. But the rest of their season is a bit tough. They have quite a tough run home. And I also think that if Sydney are, getting to the point at the end of the season where they are pretty clear on top, they'll start to rest some players. Like, I don't think they'll play Grundy through the whole season if they can give him a week off. Yeah. Or some of the midfielders, especially if they have them fit. The 2 losses that I do have them against is the Brisbane Lions and the Bombers. So that's a really big couple of games. They're both away, so I think that they may drop them. They've also got Collingwood at the SCG as well, so that's also a tough one. And the other one that I did say earlier, which was Port Adelaide, that's the bogey side. So they've got them losing that. But of course, that could change. So now on to Hawthorn. So luckily for them, they have a pretty good run home. They play the bottom 3 teams in West Coast, North Melbourne and Richmond. They do face 5 of the top 8 sides, but will likely go in 50-50 against Geelong, Fremantle and the GWS Giants. The other 2 games that they play are against Collingwood and Carlton. So they're going in with great form, but right now, I do see the only game that's really going to be separating this is next week. To them getting into the 8 is against Geelong as well. So I've got Geelong in the 8 and Hawthorn just missing out by a game. But of course, if that was to change around, that may be the difference between Hawthorn and Geelong, who makes the 8 there. Now looking at Geelong, 4 games in the Academia Park should keep them in the 8 in my opinion. I have them losing at home in one of those games against the Bulldogs. But of course, that does depend on form. On the run home, they only have won a home game away from Geelong, which is against St Kilda, so I think they'll win that one. They only play 3 of the top 8 sides left in the competition, and that game against Hawthorn is a deal breaker for me, but if they beat the Bulldogs at home or get a win away that I haven't got them winning, then I think they will make finals. I do know that the Cats are in a pretty big form slump right now,
But I just think at the moment that they've got enough games down in Geelong. Even if they do drop the game against the Bulldogs, I think they'll be able to make it. And if they do win that game against the Bulldogs, then I've got them making it pretty comfortably in the end.
Yeah, so we'll look at the Dogs, and I also want to take a look at the Giants because they're around the mark, and
you've got them in the 8. But I haven't, so
the Dogs, because I think they're going to miss.
Yeah,
I think their run's a bit even in a way. Like they could win all the games that I think they could lose. To be honest, I've got them beating Geelong down at Kardinia Park, but I've got them also losing against the Swans in round 20. But not by a lot. I've got them losing against the Crows as it's at Adelaide Oval. Yeah, so they could easily have a good run.
Do you have them beating the Giants in the last game of the season?
Yeah, I do. It's just the inconsistency of the Dogs. You just don't know which ones are going to show up. I'll look at the Giants because obviously I've got them in the 8. I've got them actually winning a bit of their away games. I think they can beat Melbourne in Melbourne. They'll beat Richmond, and I think they win this week.
Yeah.
And the fact is that Sam Taylor obviously didn't play last week. I think Tom Green, if he can get back his early season form like he did last week, even though they lost, he
was their best player.
Yeah, so if they can start turning that around, I think that is a big help for them. They just got to find their form, I think. They found it at the start of the season and what everyone really predicted at the start of the year.
So guys, that's basically all our predictions for the rest of the year. Like I said at the start, if you do have any sort of team you want us to let us know that we didn't really mention, just let us know down in the comments and I'll quickly respond, or you can respond to them as well. You have the access to the account, so you can respond to them as well if you have any sort of predictions or any ideas. If you agree or disagree, of course, make sure to let us know down below where you think some certain teams are going to finish. But that's basically all the predictions that we have for the rest of the year, and this, of course, is 100% right. We've just leaked the end of season ladder. I did anyway. You got a couple wrong. That's okay. Well, good.